China in the mid-20th century was a nation grappling with its identity. Emerging from the ashes of a tumultuous past, the country was striving to find its footing on the world stage. Yet, beneath the surface of progress, tensions simmered. The Cultural Revolution unleashed in 1966 would shatter the fragile peace and plunge China into a decade of chaos and upheaval. It was a period marked by ideological extremism, mass mobilization, and a relentless pursuit of ideological purity. The Cultural Revolution left an indelible mark on China's social fabric, its consequences echoing through generations. The Cultural Revolution was a period of intense social and political upheaval that convulsed China from 1966 to 1976. Initiated by Mao Zedong, the charismatic leader of the Communist Party, it aimed to purge the nation of perceived capitalist and traditional elements. Mao envisioned a complete societal transformation, one that would solidify his hold on power and propel China towards his vision of an egalitarian utopia. The Cultural Revolution, however, would prove to be a catastrophic experiment, unleashing forces that would spin wildly out of control. This tumultuous period witnessed the rise of the Red Guards, a paramilitary youth movement tasked with carrying out Mao's revolutionary agenda. Fueled by ideological fervor and unquestioning loyalty to their leader, the Red Guards unleashed a wave of violence and persecution across the country. Schools and universities were shuttered, intellectuals and perceived enemies of the revolution were publicly humiliated and denounced, and ancient traditions and cultural relics were destroyed with reckless abandon. The Cultural Revolution was a period of profound upheaval and loss. Millions of people were persecuted, their lives upended by false accusations, imprisonment, and exile. The economy stagnated, education was disrupted, and China's cultural heritage suffered irreparable damage. It was a dark chapter in China's history, one that continues to cast a long shadow over the nation's collective memory. Mao Zedong, the enigmatic leader of the Chinese Communist Party, played a pivotal role in shaping the course of the Cultural Revolution. A complex and controversial figure, Mao was revered by many as the father of modern China, a brilliant strategist who had led the country to victory in the Civil War and laid the foundations for its socialist transformation. However, his leadership was also marked by authoritarian tendencies and a deep-seated distrust of intellectualism and dissent. By the mid-1960s, Mao had grown increasingly concerned about what he perceived as a growing complacency within the Communist Party and a resurgence of capitalist tendencies in Chinese society. He feared that the revolutionary spirit that had brought the party to power was waning, and that China was at risk of straying from the socialist path. The Cultural Revolution, in Mao's view, was a necessary corrective, a means of purging the party and society of these perceived threats and rekindling the revolutionary fervor that had characterized China's early socialist years. Mao's vision for the Cultural Revolution was rooted in his belief in the transformative power of mass mobilization. He believed that by unleashing the energy and enthusiasm of the masses, particularly the youth, he could shatter the existing power structures and create a truly egalitarian society. He called on the Chinese people to bombard the headquarters, to challenge authority and expose those who clung to bourgeois values and capitalist tendencies. This call to arms resonated deeply with millions of young people, particularly students who were disillusioned with the rigidities of the education system and the lack of opportunities available to them. They saw in Mao's message a chance to reshape their destinies and build a new China, free from the shackles of the past. Little did they know that the revolution they were about to unleash would have devastating consequences for themselves and for the nation. The Red Guards emerged as the most visible and volatile force during the Cultural Revolution. Composed primarily of students and young workers, they were swept up in the maelstrom of revolutionary fervor and became both instruments of Mao's will and agents of chaos. Inspired by Mao's call to action and armed with his Little Red Book, a collection of his quotations, the Red Guards fanned out across the country, determined to root out counter-revolutionaries and purify Chinese society. The Red Guards' zealotry knew no bounds. They targeted anyone they deemed insufficiently revolutionary, from intellectuals and teachers to party officials and ordinary citizens. Public humiliations known as struggle sessions became commonplace. Victims were paraded through the streets wearing dunce caps, bearing placards denouncing their alleged crimes, and subjected to verbal and physical abuse. Many were sent to the countryside for re-education through hard labor. The Red Guards' reign of terror extended beyond individuals. They vandalized historical sites, destroyed cultural relics, and shut down schools and universities, deeming them bastions of bourgeois ideology. Ancient temples were razed to the ground. Libraries were emptied and their contents burned, and priceless works of art were defaced or destroyed. The Red Guards' actions, often driven by ignorance and fanaticism, resulted in the irreplaceable loss of China's cultural heritage. The cult of Mao reached its zenith during the Cultural Revolution. Mao's image was ubiquitous, plastered on walls, carried in processions, and woven into everyday life. His words were treated as gospel, his pronouncements unquestionable truths. The Red Guards, caught up in the maelstrom of personality worship, became both enforcers and victims of this cult, their lives consumed by the revolution they helped to unleash. Education, once revered as a path to personal and societal advancement, became a casualty of the Cultural Revolution's ideological crusade. Mao viewed the existing education system as elitist and detached from the realities of the working class. He sought to transform it into a tool for political indoctrination and the creation of a new generation of revolutionaries. Schools and universities were shut down, their curricula deemed bourgeois and irrelevant to the needs of the revolution. The Red Guards, many of them students themselves, played a central role in dismantling the traditional education system. They denounced teachers and professors as capitalist roaders and enemies of the people, subjecting them to public humiliation and violence. Countless educators were sent to the countryside for re-education through hard labor, their careers and lives shattered. In place of traditional academic subjects, students were subjected to intensive political indoctrination. Mao's Little Red Book became the primary text, its contents memorized and recited with religious fervor. Students were encouraged to denounce their classmates and even their own families for any perceived ideological transgressions. The education system, once a beacon of knowledge and critical thinking, had been transformed into a tool of political control and ideological conformity. The consequences of this assault on education were profound and long-lasting. An entire generation of Chinese youth was deprived of a quality education, their intellectual growth stunted by the emphasis on political indoctrination over academic rigor. The damage inflicted on the education system would take decades to repair, hindering China's economic and technological development in the years to come.